In terms of his engagement with President Obama, they are not just former colleagues, I guess you call them, as president and vice president, but they are also remain close friends, and they talk regularly about a range of issues, from policy issues to bouncing ideas off of each other to their families. So they are in close touch, but we just don't read out those specific calls. We keep them private.
And now my wild card question.
Okay.
There's a lot of construction going on in the South Lawn. What's up with that?
Oh, I like that. I'm happy to get you kind of a more official response on this, but it is a kind of regular maintenance. I think we expect it to be going on for 8 to 10 weeks, but we can get you a more official.
Like new construction going on there, something that's really supposed to like regular happenings. I mean, is this something that is consistently going on, or is this like a new construction for a new event or a new thing on the South Lawn?
No, it's not, but I can get you a more official statement from our team that is overseeing the updates in the maintenance.
Okay.
Go ahead in the back.
Thank you, Jen. 3 questions on gun violence. Does President Biden have a deadline for Congress to act? And if they don't meet that deadline, is he prepared with more executive action?
First, the president's not going to wait for Congress to act to take additional executive actions. This is the beginning. He will continue to have his team review, both from a policy and a legal standpoint, additional executive actions that are possible to take. I would just remind everyone that he also led the effort to put in place nearly 24 executive actions under the Obama-Biden administration, and he fully recognizes that the only way to put in place permanent long-term measures to keep our children, our communities, and our families across the country safe is by passing legislation. So he is also committed to that, but he's not going to wait. He can move on both levers at the same time.
And how soon does the president expect or hope to see change due to the executive action today?
Change in what way?
How soon does he expect to see some of his policies in place?
Well, there are certain periods of time of reviews for different components of this. Obviously, things like the guidance on red flag laws is something that states could use as soon as that's prepared and distributed to move forward on putting in place red flag laws. There are certain components of this that require 30 days, 60 days, et cetera. So I would say it just depends on the component of his what he proposed this morning.
Final question for you. President Biden mentioned Fred Gutenberg by name in the Rose Garden today. What role did Fred and other gun safety advocates play in crafting this executive action?
Well, first I would say that people like Fred Gutenberg and Shannon Watts and Gabby Giffords, I mean, these are people who are absolute heroes on getting gun safety measures in place. They have led the effort when there was no appetite in Washington and none at the federal level to move forward on putting in place laws around the country. And the president recognizes that, and he has a huge respect and value for the role that they've played. That's why they were here today. He's had conversations, our team has had conversations at a range of levels with a number of these gun safety leaders through the course of the president's presidency, and they have ideas, they have proposals, and certainly that's taken into account as we were considering policy options to put forward today. Go ahead. Go ahead.
German Chancellor Merkel spoke with Vladimir Putin today and demanded the withdrawal of the Russian troops on the Ukrainian border. What is the U.S. position, and has there been any contacts between the U.S. and Russia in the recent days about this issue?
I don't have any additional contact to read out, aside from I think the last high-level contact was at the defense minister level that took place at the end of last week. But since you gave me the opportunity, let me just convey that the United States is increasingly concerned by recent escalating Russian aggressions in eastern Ukraine, including Russian troop movements on Ukraine's border. Russia now has more troops on the border with Ukraine than at any time since 2014. 5 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed this week alone. These are all deeply concerning signs. We are, of course, President spoke with President Zelensky, as you know, last week. In addition to reassurances to Ukrainian officials, the United States, we are also discussing our concerns about the increase in tensions in ceasefire violations and regional tensions with NATO allies. So that's another part of the conversations that is ongoing. But I don't have any engagements with the Russians to read out.
After issuing a multitude of sanctions in the last years, and even after calling Vladimir Putin a killer, as the president did, in general, what do you think how is the influence? Does the U.S. and does the general, in the West in general, have any influence on Vladimir Putin?
Do we have any influence on Vladimir Putin? Look, I think that is perhaps in some ways suggesting that just because someone does bad behavior, we shouldn't hold them accountable unless we know it's going to immediately change their behavior. And that's just not how we see foreign policy or how we see our engagement in the world. And look, I think our focus is on, there's still an ongoing review, weeks not months, and that we are assessing as it relates to the troubling actions of Russia and this Russian government, where there will be consequences, as the president has conveyed, seen and unseen, and we hope to have more on that soon. Go ahead.
Just to follow up on your answer there regarding former President Obama, because you said they are in touch fairly regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Can you more clearly define fairly regularly?
No, that would be violating their friendship,
Okay. Is it fair to say he is...
the privacy of their friendship, I should say.
Is he fairly regularly in touch with any other former president?
I would say he is the former president he's most frequently in touch with.
Are we talking a few times a week? A few times a month?
I'm not going to give it I'm not going to define it more, other than to say that they engage not just about important moments in our country, but also about their own families. They have a connection on a personal level, so they discuss a range of issues when they connect.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Caitlin.
Does the president agree with Senator Manchin that budget reconciliation should not replace regular order in the Senate?
Well, first, for those of you who read the op-ed today, or didn't read the op-ed, either way, did you all read it? Oh, surprised to hear, I will say there's a couple of principles the president has as it relates to engagement with Congress and how Democrats and Republicans should work together. The time has come to end these political games and to usher a new era of bipartisanship where we can find common ground on the major policy debates facing our nation. He also believes the issues facing our democracy today are not insurmountable if we choose to tackle them together. And he definitely believes that Republicans have a responsibility to stop saying no and participate in finding real compromise with Democrats.
Does he agree with this line?
Well, let me just say, those are all lines in Senator Manchin's opinion piece. Look, the president believes that there is a path forward to get this American Jobs Plan passed with bipartisan support. That's why he's going to invite Democrats and Republicans here. That's why he's going to hear from them on their ideas that they've already put forward. We're going to leave it to leaders in Congress to determine the mechanisms for moving things forward, but we think there should be every opportunity to do this on a bipartisan basis.
Hey, Tim, just one more thing.
Yeah.
Can you rule out those Russian sanctions coming this week?
Coming this week, yes.
How about next week?
I'm not going to rule out further. I'm just trying to give you some sleep tomorrow. We already have the budget guidance coming tomorrow. We can't overload you on a Friday.
One more thing about infrastructure. I know that you mentioned Secretary Buttigieg would be here tomorrow. Unfortunately, due to social distancing, I will not be. So when it comes
We
to
will
the
take your
roads and-
questions with one of your colleagues.
Yeah, we will email the print pooler. But
Okay.
with regards to the 20,000 miles of highways, roads, and main streets that
Yep.
are in the president's infrastructure plan, it also says it will fix the 10 most economically significant bridges in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And it specifically says it will repair the worst 10,000 smaller bridges. So the White House, to this point, has not released any sort of a list of these. So why isn't there a list that you can share with us? And presumably there is some sort of a list, because otherwise, where did you get the 20,000 and 10,000 numbers from?
In terms of roads and railways that need to be repaired,
Yes, where did those numbers come from?
we can certainly get you a citation. What I did the other day, but I'm happy to reiterate, is explain that we expect that the package and the funding will come through a combination of grants, formula grants and competitive grants, right? And formula grants are allocated to states based on certain criteria, like the number of miles of an interstate highway or a population in a given urban area. Most of our existing transportation funding flows through formula grants. So with past infrastructure funding bills that have gone through Congress in the last several decades, this gives states a lot of flexibility in covering how they repair roads, how they repair things that need to be repaired in their state. The other type of funding is competitive grants, which those 10 bridges you talked about, they would be through competitive grants. So these direct funding to certain policy goals, like the Tiger Grant program that was a part of the Recovery Act. So there's just different, we expect that to be how it's structured. That will all be discussed and finalized through our conversations with members of Congress, with leaders in Congress, about what the combination of those funding components should be.
Thanks, Jen. If I can speak on one final thing question.
Yeah.
The Vice President talked a little bit about his, so the President talked about his role as Vice President leading the Obama administration's actions on guns. We've seen a lot of conversations about gun control legislation in that Rose Garden before.
Yep.
Why does the President think that this time will be different than any other time, particularly when he was in the Vice Presidency for this legislation, and how much, and, you know, is he committing that it will be different, I should say?
He is committing that it will be different. And if the president was just defeated, every time he was defeated on an objective or a goal, he wouldn't be president. So here he is. He remains an advocate throughout his life to putting in place gun safety measures. And it's something that he has been committed to, not just through words, but through action. And he believes it's something that, as president, he can help move forward and put in place more action.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.